Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to finish up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is we need to check out. Today, request comes in from Cynical Matt. I'm going to try my best to pronounce all of this. We're going to start with Welkin. The song Fei Zhong, or The Flying General, is the subtitle on it. The track is about a famous ancient Chinese warrior named Lu Bu. He was nicknamed the Flying General for his exceptional military prowess. He was an excellent warrior, but betrayed his allies freely. So, where that Fei Zhong comes from is that was his courtesy name given to him, which, from what I understand, is a name given to you in your adulthood. But his birth name is Lu Bu, which I have such a hard time to pronounce because the U on Bu is like it's placed in the middle of the mouth, and I have no idea how to do that. And I'm kind of placing it closer to the back, and it does not sound accurate at all. I apologize for that. I know I'm butchering it so bad. All right, let's dive into this and see what's going on with Fei Zhong, or the Flying General. Yeah, okay. Very triumphant, very light. Confident is another good word for this. Did I miss the part where this was black metal? I don't think I was expecting this for some reason. Yeah, random shift over to 3/4. Okay though. production's really throwing me off. It is like a clear, low fidelity production. I don't know what to make of it. You know, I was just about to comment how the melody progressions are kind of pop punky. They have this brightness to them that black metal typically doesn't have, and then we bring in this straight up like punk style drums. Also, you can hear the bass in this, which is a neat twist on black metal. So the first verse was in this 3/4, what I think is probably more accurate, 6/8. Our second verse was in 4/4, and now this third verse is back to the 6/8. I can't get over the guitar melody here. It straight up sounds like something I could hear some 41 playing. this is unusual too. We haven't listened to a lot of black metal with a solo on it. I wish we had done more of the solo. All right. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much to say about this aside from my usual black metal comments. It's a lot of alternating snare and bass on the drums, constant drive on the cymbals, 16th note picking on the guitars, and a nasally forward placed harsh vocal. uh, the production is a bit clear on. Actually, I want to say the production is something I want to give a whole section to. It's an interesting production, not something I want to quickly wrap up on. Um, what really intrigues me on this track, though, is the harmonic resonance of it all. It's bright. It's positive. It's enthusiastically energetic. There's a confidence to it and a brightness to it that, as I mentioned, I feel very close to hearing more often in pop rock than here, or pop punk, I think specifically. Not pop rock yet, pop punk. And we've through my journey with black metal, I've come to hear a lot of punk elements in black metal over the years that I closely relate the two. They're, at least in my mind, sort of related in some ways. I know there's some lineage there, but I'm not 100% certain on it. But there is a connection between the two, and we've heard, especially in the drums, punkier drum ideas pop up in black metal frequently. But I don't think we've heard before, if ever, these sort of very bright melodies in the guitars, and it's kind of funny, especially that chorus line, ba dum bum bum ba da ba dum bum, something along those lines. I'm not a singer, so the pitches are way off, but that idea is just so pop punk, and like the fact that the vocalist was singing along to it. For whatever at that point, I don't think the vocals were changing. I think it was just one static perceived tone from the vocalist. They have their sound that they lean into, and they just keep it consistent throughout. Pretty typical for harshes. But because they're paired with the vocals that way, I kind of hear them singing along with it, and it's just so like it just makes me want to get out and start skanking in a circle because like it's not black metal at all. The only thing that really makes it blackened is the constant drumming in the background and the fact that they're not held out notes. They're 16th note picked even on the longer the moments when we hold on to a specific tone for a while. So it's got a blackened texture to it, but compositionally, this is so far from blackened music, and it really makes me laugh. It's so unexpected, especially since black metal has its branches. It goes in so many different directions, and it envelops so many different experimentational routes. But the heart of black metal is darkness and satanic and lonely, and isolating. And I've always described the sound, the production of it as very black and white, snow, TV static, that kind of thing. Um, and for this to be so bright and cheerful, it goes against my general idea of black metal. Like I said, even though I know it branches out in so many different directions, like the base vanilla black metal idea I have, this is so far divorced from it, and it's kind of comical. Um, and I love it for that, actually. It's not something I think I can listen to a lot of, and we'll get into why later. But on a purely harmonic level, the notes chosen, the relationships with the notes around them, the chords and melodies that we get out of it, it is so good. Um, and it's just not a style I thought I'd ever hear mixed with black metal. Now, it's paired with a production that is. I don't know how to really describe this. It's really muddy in a way that everything can be perfectly heard. And, like, that is one of the biggest oxymorons I think I've ever said on this channel. And yet, I think it perfectly describes this. It's everything blurs together into this wall of sound, but if I wanted to, I could pick anything out. I think I have a tough time hearing the two guitars in isolation. I really have to focus specifically on a side, left and right. I think if I was doing this on speakers, I would find it more difficult to differentiate the guitars. But with headphones, I have a hard right and a hard left pan. Really easy to separate the sides. But otherwise, I think I'd have a tough time separating them. Um, but otherwise, if I wanted to know what the bass was doing, I can hone in on the bass. Oh, okay, that's neat. But the minute that I unfocus, it just blurs into a wall of sound again. It's wizardry. It's mid-fi production at best. It is muddy and staticky and fuzzy everywhere. Especially in the percussion work, the bass kick is just a really muddy sound. I'm not a fan of it much at all. Uh, it's not as what was that? There was a band we checked out where I mentioned that the bass kick sounded like a splat. This is not like that. This is just a really hollow thud that's kind of missing both the oomph and impact of the sound while also blending into everything. And it's not my favorite kind of bass kick production. But I mean, it works primarily because I know that black metal goes for these sorts of lo-fi to mid-fi productions. And otherwise, if this was any other style, I'd have a lot to say about how it's not working. And the only reason I think it works here is because of context, because I know what black metal does. If this was one of the first black metal songs I heard, I'd probably go pretty hard into the drum production because it is really difficult to hear much of what's going on in the tom, snare, and bass specifically. The cymbals, I think, are fine. They're very bright. They sit above everything else in the band, and they sort of have their own area pitch wise. Nothing really gets up into that range. They kind of shimmer above the rest of the band. It's kind of a neat production thing going on there. But everything else in the drum kit is just real muddy. It blends in with everything else. But the thing is too is that I can hear it all. If I want to know what the bass kick's doing, I can hone in on it. Like, oh, okay, that's it. But again, the minute I unfocus, it just blurs together. It's kind of bizarre. Honestly, I think it's the best production that a black metal band could go for, and I don't know how they achieved it, but you get the muddiness and the wall of sound that you want while allowing someone like me who's trying to figure out what each instrument's doing. It gives them the ability to hone in on things. best of both worlds kind of. I don't know how they achieved it. It's really strange. Um, and interestingly too, is the vocals are fairly pronounced. They're not tucked into the group like black metal likes to do. So that was nice. I could actually hear each of the syllables. In fact, on this Bandcamp page, the lyrics are written out in Chinese and English, and I was trying to figure out what they were singing in, and it wasn't matching the English. So I think they're actually singing in Chinese. Um, well, I don't know if it's specifically Chinese. Let me do a quick translate on this because the album title is in Chinese. So I'm going to assume that the lyrics would also, but the group is from Singapore. Yep, this is Chinese. And the official language of Singapore is Malay. So I just wanted to make sure I wasn't incorrectly stating things there. But the lyrics are in Chinese, at least on their Bandcamp page. Um, but yeah, so they're not singing in English, and I could only figure that out because the vocals, the pronunciation and enunciation of the syllables is very clear and concise despite the compression of the harsh and the muddiness of the production overall. But I think a lot of that is because the vocals are very prominent, they're very forward placed. They're not tucked in like a lot of black metal bands do. I appreciate that. I always appreciate that. Now, I had mentioned earlier that this isn't something I would probably listen to on my own despite enjoying parts of it. And that's because, at least this song in particular, which there's only 4 tracks on this album, all of them close to that 10-minute mark, it's still probably a 40-minute album. It's it has pacing issues. There's several times when we heard a riff. Actually, this happened a lot leading back into verses, and even at the beginning, our intro into our verse, where I feel like we heard the 4 bar phrase, we heard it a couple of times, maybe 4 times. I was like, okay, I get it. I know what we're doing here. Let's move on. And they'll repeat it for another 4 bars or maybe another 8 bars. I'm like, dang, I get it. I hear what you're doing. I don't think the general composition here is really justifying spending so much time in this. And it happens all over the place. There are very few segments that I felt moved on at what I felt was an appropriate time, which of course this whole idea of pacing is perspective. It's bias based. So it's subjective. That's what I want. So you might think that the pacing's fine, and you actually maybe want to sit in these riffs a bit longer. But especially when the riffs, for me anyways, the riffs end up being utilized in our verse anyways. I know there's so much ahead of hearing the same riff. I really don't need to hear so much of it in isolation too. And then the one time that I felt we moved on too quickly was the solo. I really liked that. The guitar solo was a neat twist. We don't hear that too often in black metal. I really liked the way that the guitar solo melody played around with the guitar melody in the background, which was that really pop punk thing from the chorus. I thought it was really neat how they were dancing around, getting some nice dyads out of that as well. And we only got like 8 bars of it, maybe 16. It was over and done with so quick, and I would have loved to just double the length on that. It's one of the only places maybe that I wish we would have spent twice as much time in. Most of this song I probably would have cut in half. Not necessarily the verses or choruses themselves, although our final chorus, maybe it was just general fatigue, but when we repeated the final chorus, I was like, oh, yep. This is gonna feel a bit long for me. But I think if we had cut down most of those pre-verses, cut them in half, and brought the runtime of this down to maybe like 7.5, 8 minutes, maybe even extend out the solo a little bit, that final chorus wouldn't have had that feeling for me. I don't think there's anything wrong with doubling up on the final chorus. It really was everything that led up to it that already had me a bit fatigued on the song as a whole. And I think I already touched on the overall atmosphere of it. It's just triumphant. Is that word I used? Very confident, sure of themselves. And it's very carefree. It has a bright positivity to it that kind of does whatever you want, which matches with the idea of just being exceptionally proficient in your skill while also not caring about anything else. As Cynical Matt stated, that they were a fantastic general, I think it was, but they also had no problem betraying their allies. So, yeah, I'm really good at what I do, and no one's going to get in my way about me being happy or doing what I want to do and something like that. And I think the music does a good job of embodying that. And I'm going to hit some lyrics. We'll see what's going on there. So the lyrics here are fairly plain and simple. It describes the flying general. Was it Fei? Well, that oh there we go, Fei Zhong. I'm gonna use that name since I can't pronounce his birth name very well. It describes him as a great warrior of the north, um, who no one could stop on his horseback with lion armor and trident halberd. He was called the Tyrant. No, all right, here we go. It says, interesting, it says, alas, courageous but without loyalty. At the first sight of gain, did you abandon all virtue and slay your own father? So yeah, definitely a greedy person. Any way that he could see to advance himself in a situation, he would take it, which, like Cynical Matt had described in their description of the track, or specifically even the person, they had no problem freely betraying allies. We have a stanza about smoke in the sky, and our guy, the flying general, riding into battle like a phoenix, and just annihilating everybody in his path. It talks about three mighty heroes who go to fight him, and despite 100 exchanges, that nobody is certain who the victor is. Three against one doesn't sound fair, but he seems to be holding his own. We get to the final stanza, which is about his defeat. And he begins to plead and beg for mercy. And who is this? Oh, Chen Gong. Uh, he has no pity, and he cuts his head off, and that's the end of the Flying General. He lost his life in battle. That's the whole song. Like I said, very clear statements and lyrics. No metaphor. Well, there is metaphor in here. We have both metaphor and what's the other one? Simile. But it's all very clearly stated. Uh, just almost a recounting of events. And I think it fits well with some of the music, except the ending doesn't quite seem to be as abrupt and pleading as what was actually happening. But otherwise, the idea of somebody who's so good at combat and just goes out into combat and just dominates the battlefield. That sort of, like I mentioned, very sure of yourself, confident, boisterous sort of music is present throughout this track. So those are my thoughts on this song. Why can't I figure out what the song called? Where is the name of this? Oh yeah, it's Fei Zhong, the Flying General. I don't know why I lost track of that. Those are my thoughts on it. Let me know what you thought. Down in the comments, let me know if you enjoyed it, if there's anything that stood out to you, maybe things you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on. Above the comments, in the description box, there is a link for Linktree. It'll take you to this menu right here. It has links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, that wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow. We're going to wrap up our title tracks theme, as well as check out a special selection and a creative request. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.